Welcome everybody to another BDA Midnight Podcast, broadcasting to you at the witching hour. To all of you midnight cruisers, all you late night marauders, all you late shifters, insomniacs and lunatics, this one is for you. Whoa, what a weekend we just had of boxing. It was jam-packed, tremendous action. He had a little bit of everything for everybody. There was controversy after the ring, after the bell action, after the fight action, controversial decisions, displays of skill, scary knockouts, and upsets. I mean, it was everything that you want out of boxing. I can't count the number of fights that happened this weekend. There were a lot, all over the world. Boxing is dead, right, guys? My fucking ass. Listen, there were too many fights to cover in one podcast. I mean, every fight that took place this weekend deserves some matter of attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack everything throughout different episodes here. I want to focus on this one, take the opportunity to focus on the HBO card that took place between Terrence Crawford and Felix Diaz, and also on the undercard, Raymundo Beltran against Jonathan Maicelo at 135 pounds. Let's start out with the main event. Terrence Crawford taking on Felix Diaz for a bunch of trinkets that I don't pay attention to. This is something that you guys have to understand. I don't care about belts. Yes, fighters have good use they can use them. It helps their career, but I don't like to pay attention to them. So I don't know which titles the fight was for. Don't ask me. All I know is that Crawford is one of the best fighters in the world, and at this point, probably the best 140-pounder in the world too. He doesn't really have a lot of competition at this point. And Felix Diaz, who at one point had been fighting, I believe, at 147, all of a sudden goes down to 140. And now, the thing about Felix Diaz is he held his own against Lamont Peterson, beat Sammy Vasquez convincingly. Sammy Vasquez, who is a good, skilled fighter, although apparently not as good as we thought. Nevertheless, Diaz also has a gold medal at the Olympics, and I know Olympic success doesn't always translate well into the professional ranks, but it still shows you that he's a guy that knows what he's doing inside the ring. And for the first couple of rounds, he was, doing some good work in there against Crawford, but just Crawford took it to a whole other level. He shifted gears and Diaz could not keep up and actually got quite a beating in there. Now here's the thing about Terrence Crawford. Let's take a look at the good here. He's very good at gauging the distance. He's a sharp counterpuncher. He's always attentive, always watching his opponent. He's got good footwork. He's got good mechanics of foot, not just foot speed, but he knows what to do with his feet. If it's not apparent to anybody, or if it wasn't apparent before, I think it's quite apparent now that Terrence Crawford is on a whole other level than most guys in boxing. He is elite. Now, if you want to get into a discussion about what makes a fighter elite or what elite even means, in this case, let's see it as somebody that's in the top 5% of all fighters in the world. Or maybe even 99%. I don't know. There's a lot of guys good guys, tough guys that would be champions, but if they take on Crawford, they're not going to win. He's going to make them look, I wouldn't say amateurish, but the difference in class is going to be quite apparent. That's how good Terrence Crawford is. So, I mean, what happened here? Diaz was short, he was fast, and he was skilled himself, but Crawford just shut him down. So now, in my mind, I go, where does Crawford go from here? He's in the type of class where the only other guys I want to see him against are guys that could compete against him. And looking at the landscape at the 140-pound division, I don't see that many guys out there. Okay? Let's talk about a little bit about the bat from Crawford first. Despite his skills, which are tremendous, as I already explained, he can't be hit. And why is that? Well, that's partly because of his style. He doesn't move his upper body as much as Lomachenko does, or as, for example, a guy like Pernell Whitaker. He's not going to drop his hands and just be loosey-goosey at the upper waist. He uses his footwork to control the distance and to back away. So when guys try to engage, he takes a little step back and they get frustrated. So eventually what happens is they overshoot trying to get to him, and at one point he stops going back, he plants his feet and he counters with power. And that's just it, Johnny. It's he outboxes guys, and if they keep testing their luck, eventually they go down and they learn not to go forward, and they lose a wide decision, or they keep going forward and they get knocked out. Or in certain instances, if Crawford is outgunning them, he's the one that's going to go forward. Now, in this fight, he did try to go forward once he had Diaz hurt, once he had him worn down from uppercuts. And essentially also, Diaz was tired from swinging wildly, trying to get at Crawford. But the thing is this, Crawford, like I said, doesn't move his head a whole lot. So he's there to be hit. He is there to be hit when he's going forward. Diaz hit him with a good bunch of overhand lefts and some right hooks when he was going forward. The other thing is Crawford keeps his hands down a little bit when he's pivoting. Now he remedied that after the middle rounds. So whenever he was pivoting, he kept his hands up a little bit more. Nevertheless, I did see him get hit in this fight. Now it's normal in boxing, you're gonna get hit. It's very rare to see a guy like a Mayweather or Willie Pep or a Pernell Whitaker who take, 10% of the other guy's offense. But, it's very hard to make a guy miss. This is boxing. You're going to get hit. That being said, against Henry Lundy, against Gamboa, against Victor Postol, against Beltran, against Diaz, this past weekend, they were all able to land their shots on Crawford at some point in the fight. And they were flush shots. So we know he's got a bit of a good chin. Then again, he's never really faced a huge puncher yet. I mean, Beltran was able to land a couple of shots, but Crawford, thanks to his defensive abilities, and which in a way, his offense is also a good defense because guys get a little gun shy and they don't want to throw their punches anymore. But they were all able to find him. And this brings up the issue of future opponents, because there's talk about Pacquiao fighting him, or rather Crawford fighting Pacquiao. And despite Pacquiao's advanced age, his past two fights are an indication that he still has a lot of talent, physical talent. He's still fast, and he still hits pretty fucking hard. And the thing about Pacquiao is, if you notice his style and how he would mesh with Crawford's style, it's a bit of a bad news for Crawford. Like I said, Crawford relies on his footwork to establish distance and to stay away from guys. That being said, Pacquiao cuts the distance faster than most people expect. I forget which fighters had said that at one point, but he said that the dangerous thing about Pacquiao is that you're gauging him, you're using your jab, you're using your footwork, and just when you think he's outside of range, he jumps in and catches you and you don't see him coming because he's so fast. Now keep in mind what I just explained about Crawford. He likes to take little steps back, but if he underestimates Pacquiao's speed and he doesn't see the punches coming, he might get hit. And like I said, he can get hit. We've seen it. And Pacquiao punches a lot harder than anyone that Crawford has ever faced. Even more explosive in terms of speed and power than Yorkis Gamboa, who's a physical marvel himself. So, I mean, I don't know. Crawford, look, listen. He's, like I said, he's a tremendous fighter. He's very gifted and skilled. But despite the fact that he's been able to beat guys like Lundy and Gamboa and Diaz, despite the fact that he's been able to beat them all and demonstrate that he's a whole other level above them, there's a difference between those guys and Manny Pacquiao. Even, like I said, an old Pacquiao. He's still very, very difficult to contain. Even Mayweather, who a lot of people think is the best ever, had to fight a perfect fight just to do enough to shut Pacquiao down. And that involved a lot of clinching. It involved being very economical with his shots, and it involved a lot of movement. Crawford has that type of movement. He does have that type of precision in counterpunching. But I don't know about the chin. Now, that's the other thing about Crawford, is that he was doing a lot of clinching in this fight. Now, I don't know if it was because he didn't want to fight Diaz on the inside, or because or because he couldn't. But I saw a lot of clinching, and the ref never warned him or took a point away. I remember at one point, Crawford was complaining about a headbutt, and the ref told him, well, listen, if you keep clinching, this is what's going to happen. So the ref was aware of the clinching. He just chose not to do anything about it. But it was once he wore Diaz down that he was more comfortable on the inside, and then he started launching his vicious uppercuts. But for the most part, he didn't really want to fight on the inside. Now, Pacquiao obviously is not an inside fighter, but it just goes to show you what I said about how Mayweather was able to shut Pacquiao down with clinching, so Terrence Crawford might do that. But like I said, big difference between fighting guys like Postal and Diaz and Beltran and then taking on Manny Pacquiao. Now let me tell you this right now. I'd rather see Mikey Garcia take on Lomachenko, who would be going up in weight, rather than seeing Lomachenko and Crawford go at it. Because I think it's too big a leap in weight for Lomachenko. And I'd rather see Crawford go to 147. Now, seeing the landscape out there, the promotional landscape, that might not happen. HBO mentioned Julius Indongo from Namibia. And that might be the only fight that they can make, because there's like I said, there's other promotional factions out there that separate Crawford from the best 140 pounders in the world. So I don't know if a move to 147 right now is gonna be possible for Terrence Crawford. As for Indongo, well, he's tall, he's tough, but he's already 34. And if you've seen him fight, you see that he knows what he's doing in there. He's got good senses, good instincts, but he is slow. And sometimes when he comes forward, he's wide open. He lunges in with hooks, and every time he throws one punch with one hand, the other hand is low. And as you saw, and it should still be fresh in your mind, how Crawford is very, very good, very adept at taking a little step back, seeing an opening, and taking advantage of it with power. And if it doesn't wear you down, or it doesn't knock you out right away, those punches, eventually they wear you down, and guys either quit, or they quit in another way, which is to stop throwing punches and stop trying. And I don't know if Indongo can present a big challenge for Crawford. On the other hand, like I said, he's awkward, so that awkwardness and his height might play to his advantage, but I mean, I doubt it. At this point, Crawford is in a strange place. Who knows where he's going? I tell you where he's not going. If he keeps up some of the antics that he was showing, he's not going to be a mainstream star. If he, like I said, continues doing what he does. Because let's talk about his marketability. Like I always say, or often say, boxing is show business. You got to show people something. Now, what Crawford has shown us so far is that he's a tremendous fighter. Very good boxer. Not terribly exciting in the sense that he doesn't dazzle and razzle people like Lomachenko, who is more like a, how shall I say this? He really impresses people with all his pivots and all his hands down and gesturing. He's like a performer in there. Like a ballet performer or something, if you find that type of thing interesting, which I don't. Let me just make that perfectly clear right now. I don't watch ballet. But that's the only way I can describe it, in that it's sort of like it's more artistic. It's something that I could see pretentious people of a higher class going, people that would despise boxing or normally look down upon it, but all of a sudden taking an interest because, there's the movement encompasses a certain allure about the world. And I think it's a metaphor for war. And shut the fuck up. It's not a metaphor for war. It is war. It's people fighting inside a ring with gloves on. That's it. But that's the type of allure that Lomachenko brings. Crawford is a more standard fighter. He likes to pivot. He likes to parry punches. He'll work off a jab. But he won't pivot as much on the inside or coming forward. He'll pivot away from the ropes, and that's it. He's not as marvelous as Lomachenko. But I do prefer his style a little bit more, because in a way I like to think that if I were a boxer, maybe it's things that you can incorporate easier. Now, he does have hand speed and tremendous power. Those are things that you are born with, not some things that you can replicate unless you have them. But I got away from what I wanted to say, which was that what's his marketability here? In terms of ring action, he's not an action fighter. He's not a dramatic beat you down fighter. Yes, he beat Diaz down here, but like I said before, he didn't really want to go forward that much. He seemed reluctant to go in. Now, of course, that had to do with the fact that Diaz was catching him with a couple of shots, and it's also not in Terrence Crawford's nature to just barge in, throwing shots and hooks and power shots. Now, he was showboating a little bit too much in this fight. I think that has more to do with, and this is something, by the way, that he's been doing in the Postal fight He did that in the Postal fight when he was winning in the last round, and he also did it in the Lundy fight. Now, I don't remember why that started in those fights, but I do remember that here was Diaz who instigated it more because, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think I remember seeing Diaz frustrated in the beginning of the fight, and I think during the end of one of the rounds, he stood and stared Crawford down, and Crawford stood right there and stared him right back. So I think it had to do with that, hey, you're gonna stare me down, I'm gonna clown you. And also, partly it had to do because eventually Diaz, once he was outclassed and tired, he went into a shell. He receded into a shell, and Crawford, who I don't think, like I said, he's not that comfortable going forward, was trying to get him to open up so that he could counter him. And I think that's why he was showboating. Now, again, this is all speculation. Bottom line is, I don't like showboating. So don't think that I'm justifying what he's doing. I'm explaining why he might have done it. But I don't like it. Like I said, even, this fight, okay, maybe he was trying to guard or lull Diaz forward. But against Postal, I don't remember Postal staring him down. And especially in the last round, you already have a guy outclassed. You're beating him. You outclassed him. Why, against Postal, he was sticking his tongue out and lowering his hands and running away and taunting him. I go, wow, is that necessary? That might say something about Crawford's character, because the character outside the ring shows that he's prone to getting in trouble. Altercations outside of tire shops and bowling alleys. And I don't know, Chuck E. Cheese's. I don't know. I only know of 2 occasions where he did, he got into trouble. And also the fact that he blacklisted the media because he didn't like it that they reported on his outside the ring troubles. So it just shows you that there's a bit of a mean streak in him and a little hard-headedness, which is to be expected when you got a guy as good as he is, as good an athlete and as good a performer. You have to be different than most people. Let's put it that way. And I know some people are saying, well, this is boxing. I mean, the people are gonna showboat and people are gonna, it's not a tickling contest here. They're not here to be friends. They're here to beat the crap out of each other. And if there's a little showboating, a little meanness and taunting going on, well, so be it. And I agree. I just don't like it. I mean, do you have to like it? I mean, would you really like, in your real life, somebody's very talented, you know them personally, but they're assholes? Are you going to say, oh, well, since they're so talented, I'm going to accept it and I'm going to tolerate it? No, you wouldn't. Come on, admit it. You wouldn't. You would talk shit about these people behind their back so much, or if you had any balls, you would actually tell them to their face that they're assholes, and you would never meet them again. Because, like I said, that person, talented people are often very hard-headed, and if things don't go their way, or people don't do as they say, they just cut them off. Now, I'm not saying Crawford is an asshole outside the ring, but I'm just telling you that he's showboating. Now, that showboating, going back to boxing being show business, doesn't win you a lot of fans. It just doesn't, people. You just accept that. Now, people are going to say, well, what about Mayweather? Do I have to keep repeating? Mayweather was an aberration. He was something that happens every once in a while. And now people are trying to replicate it. And also Conor McGregor over at the field of MMA, boxing's cousin, he's adopted a similar strategy of Mayweather about, which encompasses a lot of talking, and a lot of taunting, and that works for him. And it worked for Mayweather, but it won't work for everybody. It just won't. So boxers out there have to understand that just because fighter A tried something and it worked for him, it won't work for other people. There's such a thing as circumstances and context that works or that plays into a fighter's economic marketability. And Crawford, at this point in time, the taunting, I don't think is going to help him. It might end up helping him. I don't know. What the fuck do I know, right? The fuck do I know? But I'm just telling you what I feel and what I've seen other people or read other people say across the internet. They don't like the showboating, especially when you've already outclassed the guy. So there's that. Will it win him fans? I don't know. Maybe fans are saying that Crawford likes a little bit of character and they won't want to see him fight unless he steps up against a guy of his level, like a Mikey Garcia, a Lomachenko, a Keith Thurman, or Sean Porter. Until then, we'll see what happens with Crawford. Certainly, there's no denying that he is a fantastic talent. So just pure boxing, putting everything else aside, he is a guy that you want to watch boxing. Now, on the undercard, we have Raymundo Beltran versus Jonathan Maicelo at 135 pounds. And Beltran and Maicelo getting it on. This was something that I was looking forward to. I was looking forward to it a lot. I thought it was going to be a very compelling fight. And for as long as it went, it was 2 rounds, very short fight. Raymundo Beltran, he's very good at cutting off the ring. He's tough. He cut his cloth. He forged his skills by sparring Manny Pacquiao at the wild card. Forget about his record. Don't let that record fool you. He's a very skilled fighter, and I would say he should be rated higher at 135, despite the fact that he hasn't really beaten all that many people. But potentially, he has the skills to compete with anybody at 135, or actually beat a lot of these guys at 135. Jonathan Maicelo, who had looked very sharp against Jose Felix Jr. in his last fight. That's why I was looking forward to this fight, because I said these two guys, this is a crossroads fight. We have a veteran in Beltran, and we have Jonathan Maicelo, up and coming, physically talented, very fast. You saw how he was able to catch Raymundo Beltran with his speed. Maicelo is a front runner. He'll catch guys, he'll surprise them with his speed. But Beltran, man, hey, you've been sparring with Manny Pacquiao, you've seen speed before. And he was also in there, remember, Beltran, against Terrence Crawford. He went 12 rounds with him. And so he's seen hand speed. So he adapted, and then he launched a beauty of a left hook, which is interesting because we had posted over at BDA, we'd posted a video on Johnny Gonzalez, how he set up his bomb of left hook against Abner Mares. And in this fight, you could, in hindsight, watching the fight again, you could see Beltran noticing that Maicelo kept his hands down, or that he stretched them outward every time Beltran went to the body. And Beltran, showing that he's a thinking fighter, went to the jab to the body, and then right afterwards took a little pause, two paces, 2 beats. He waited 2 beats, and then he ducked and threw a left hook upstairs, and Maicelo went down. Just goes to show you, no matter how talented you are, physically that is, if you lack the skills, if you don't know how to keep your hands up, the fight will end at any moment. And Beltran, of course, very happy. Now he's in line to face Robert Easter Jr. for his title. And I didn't really I didn't see the HBO telecast, but I did see part of the Max Kellerman interview, and they're talking about his green card and everything. Look, listen, they had to make time there because the fight was so short. They had to buy a little time interviewing him and asking him all sorts of questions. I was expecting afterwards that Max Kellerman was going to run out of things to ask him, and then would start just saying, well, what are you doing this weekend? What are you going to do tomorrow? What do you like to eat? Do you use toilet paper or baby wipes? Tell us about that. But I was still thinking about the knockout while they were talking. I didn't care about what they were saying. Raymundo Beltran, Robert Easter Jr. brings me to mind the fact that, and I'm going to talk about this later on during the week in the second part of the podcast. But I wanted to see Robert Easter Jr. take on Rances Barthélemy, 2 large, tall fighters, lightweights, I should say, taking on each other. And they're both tall guys that like to fight on the inside. That'd be like Diego Corrales fighting Diego Corrales. That's a fight that I wanted to see. But things didn't go like I expected in the Barthélemy Relic fight. Relic should have won that fight from what I hear, but the thing, I haven't been able to catch the fight. I missed the fight, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere on the internet. So if anybody can drop a link, send me a private message or something, tell me where I can watch this fight, because I can't find it. Talking about the Barthélemy Relic fight, by the way. But I still want to see Barthélemy take on Easter Jr. I think that would be a fireworks type of fight. But now Beltran is in line to take on Easter Jr. And if they do fight, I don't know who I'd pick in that fight. Beltran can punch, he's got more experience, and Easter Jr. can be hit, as he showed in the Bugiri fight. But I'd have to favor Beltran in that one. But Easter Jr. does look like a very skilled fighter. And that in itself would also be a very explosive fight. So we got a lot to look forward to here in the lightweight division, contrary to the 140-pound division, which is quite desolate. It's like a barren wasteland in there, ruled by a warlord, a vicious boxing king named Terrence Crawford. So that's the action that we saw this weekend on HBO. In part 2, we're going to be talking about the Showtime cards. We're going to be talking about Porky Medina and his loss to Benavides. Tremendous fight. Might have been the fight of the week. We're going to talk about Andre Dirrell and his antics. We're going to talk about Gary Russell Jr. We're going to talk about Hassan and Dam and that controversial fight in Japan. Oh man, what else are we going to talk about? About all the other fights that took place this weekend. So, thank you for tuning in for this part 1. We will see you in part 2.